I really don't want every single YouTube video upload to be like a lesson or something that it feels like I'm teaching. I don't want it to feel too heavily like just that. But today's video is top 3 places for inspiration when starting a brand. So maybe some parts of these inspirations will help for other things outside of a brand because they're actually good inspirational bits. Stay posted for the last one out of the 3 as well, because that one is the most important. So yeah, top 3 places for inspiration. Now, when it comes to starting a brand, I think the first thing you have to be aware of is that you're going to be inspired by lots of people that you want to look like. Totally fine. That is that, and just for reference, that is how it actually works. You look at people who you really like and you're like, yeah, I want to do that. Whatever that is, I want to be that. That's fine, but just keep being inspired, keep looking and being inspired. So before I tell you the 3 places that I would advise to get inspiration from, and you know, there might be obvious ones, that might be obvious like tips for you, but I'll explain a little bit more about like why they've been important to me. But when I've been trying to get inspiration in the past, I like to see a lot. I'm a very visual person, coming from the creative side of background more so. I like to see visuals, I like to see moving images, I like to be inspired by colours and shapes. And sometimes seeing a colour can get you inspired about a different colour. It's very weird to explain, but once you've spent hours on these places that I'm going to tell you about, you kind of get a good idea and a good representation for it. So inspiration number 1 is probably the most key online way of getting inspiration, and that is Pinterest. Now, I can't put you on sooner to the importance of the mood boards that are created through Pinterest. It is the most understated and overlooked app for inspiration out of every single social media platform. I personally think that if you are in a place where you go, let's just do like an example. So I said I didn't want to make it like a teaching, so I'm doing examples like teaching. But you will just go with it. Say, for example, you want to be a seller of festival clothes in a streetwear fashion. So you want to be like an all year round festival type of vibe, like cool, like rave-esque, or just like that kind of atmosphere, like creating that. You could go in to Pinterest and search abstract background designs. You could search people at festivals. Once you start making a search through Pinterest, it starts to augment a search. Like your DNA page is the mood board. And once you start searching and using the tools and going, show me like happy models, show me people at festivals, show me like festival fashion, all these little micro bullet points. Once you start to search them, Pinterest then goes, oh, okay, so you want to see more of that. So how about this? This is on a similar trend, or people that looked at this also looked at this. It's like a real easy way for you to get lots of visual examples and be inspired by a group of things at the same time. That's why I find it really important. And not to throw shade at places like Instagram, which is very good for inspiration, but you find yourself going down a rabbit hole of just like what the algorithm's thrown at you in terms of it's just a scroll one at a time, whereas Pinterest is like very visual. Pinterest might tell you like the 50 things it wants you to see, but you can only click one of those 50 things and you never really go back to click on the other 49. It's always one thing that leads to another click. Just the way that the platform works for inspiration has been amazing. Whenever I used to do collabs with, like, not collabs, used to do collection drops, and I'd want to do stuff about Tommy Hilfiger, I'd always look at what the old campaigns used to look like for Tommy Hilfiger, what the brand, and this is probably a bit of a tangent, but when I was doing brand collections, I always wanted to know what the heritage of the brands was being represented by through the actual brand itself and how they wanted to be seen, so that I can embellish some part of inspiration based on what I've seen into what I'm about to create. So Pinterest, absolutely top tier. Absolutely top tier. Now, I haven't thought of a second one yet because I just said about Instagram then, but I would say the second biggest place for inspiration, the second biggest place, let's be honest, is your competition. Who you want to actually be, or who you want to look like is going to be so relative to like how you look yourself. It genuinely will. It's a rule of thumb. Like if you go, I really like this guy, but I don't want to look like him. You've planted this seed where you've acknowledged that you like this seller. And also, there's this argument with people copying other people. Flattery is the best form of imitation. Realistically, inspiration isn't taking somebody's idea and just doing it yourself. It is taking inspiration. It is taking some part of like. It's almost like if you went on a website by your competition and you saw that they used two models, and they used certain models in a certain background and they had a certain look, but you liked one part of that delivery, you would then take that and then embellish that into your own idea. So the whole point I see of inspiration is it's like somebody giving you a foot up to see over the brick wall, but it's not like a hack by just doing the exact same thing. When you do that, you're not being inspired, you're just copying. And there's a definite difference between inspiration and copying. You know, look at Wes Anderson films. People make inspired content on that, but they're inspired by the shot type and the way that Wes Anderson uses the camera, more so than people are going to recreate what he's done. Also, just a side note on films, people won't really recreate what he's done because Wes Anderson is goated for films. So is Guy Ritchie. Such a small tangent there. But competition. I think that if you think about Pinterest as your visual way to look at similar things that aren't directly what you want to do, it's really key. The competition will allow you to look at somebody who, look at somebody who's 2 years ahead of you. Look at somebody who's 2 years behind you. You can be inspired by somebody who's not in as good a position as you as well, because the level of wherever you are in a position is just relative to how you're being seen. Like if you think that you can't get inspiration from a person who has 2,000 followers on Instagram because you've got 50,000, then you, my friend, will have some shortcomings with that mindset, because I think you can take advice from and inspiration from everybody. People that are small as well, small scale starting out, they have the time to invest in looking at all these other ideas. So I would actually go back to people who are starting out and taking inspiration from them, because they are actually looking at what the industry looks like to them right now. This is a little side note. So inspiration, competition, I think it's definitely an important factor to do. I think it's an important thing to accept. It's not like you shoot something exactly the same as somebody else and then you put on the caption, inspired by this brand. Like, just make sure that whenever you take inspiration, you're taking almost a pinch of salt version of inspiration. Look at something, appreciate it, understand what you appreciate by what you're looking at, take that and recreate it in your own way. Do not copy people. Only be inspired by them, I tell you. Yeah, I tell you. That'll be another video. Now, third and final point of what I would say, going back to the question, the best ways to find inspiration when starting your brand. The last one, you may or may not like this one. This one's more of a mindfulness one. The last point for finding inspiration with your brand is going outside and looking around. I know that sounds super vague, but when I mean that, I don't mean go outside, go for a walk, scroll on your phone, just be outside but not aware of outside. Go and be aware of the outside. Go and walk, go for a walk, and go and interact with people. Go and experience the sky, go and experience the shops. I know it sounds super vague, but when you look at certain things in certain different lights, when you're not distracted by it, and especially things that are in the real world, you can take inspiration from everything. The reason why I took in inspiration for that mostly was a big chunk of the time I would go on walks and look for new locations, for photography, for models. I would look at a place and I'd be like, okay, this is derelict. Could I shoot Timberland here? Could I shoot Carhartt here? Which models would I use in this backdrop? Would I be using a wide angle lens or a macro lens? Is this going to be a profile on the brand? Is this going to be more of a model exploration? Am I going to work on different types of body poses? so many different points that stemmed from that inspiration of the background that wouldn't have been born without seeing that. So for me, the going outside was more so for photography. The Pinterest inspiration was more so for an overall visual presence. You can't find certain cool looks by going out into the world that are directly and purely made for like places like Pinterest. Competition, understand where people are in the market. Do not compare yourself to where people are, because you aren't them. So there's this stupid point in like this like weird bit of like space where people are super fixated on how somebody else is doing when they don't ask themselves enough how they're doing. And I think that's the most key point of that. And then outside, experiencing life, experiencing the world, seeing stuff, seeing like things and being just inspired by life. I think that if you take those three inspirations, at least one of them will serve you well in one area of it, for sure. For sure. So yeah, hope you like it, dudes.